You know, when a billionaire investor, a guy they literally call the king of real estate, makes a big prediction, people tend to sit up and listen. And lately, Sam Zell has laid out a pretty stark warning for the U.S. economy. So let's dive right in and unpack what he's seeing that has him so concerned.
But before we get to all this scary stuff, he kicks things off with this little gem. It's a really bold statement, especially right now. He's confident he'll get richer. Now, you'd think that means he's super optimistic about the market, right? Well, think again.
Yeah, because almost in the same breath, he drops this bombshell. He believes the US is heading straight into a recession. So, wait a minute. How can both of those things be true at the same time? How can he be so sure about his own fortune while predicting a huge economic downturn for everybody else? That's the real puzzle we're going to dig into.
Okay, so his whole argument really boils down to two main things. First, the deep, deep problems he sees brewing inside the U.S. economy itself. And second, a growing threat to the U.S. dollar's power on the world stage. First up, let's talk about the cracks forming from within. Zell is convinced that the U.S. has created a massive, underlying problem for itself, a problem that's, well, about to come knocking. All right, get ready for this number. According to Zell, the United States has piled on a jaw-dropping $700 to $800 trillion in new debt in just the last 4 years. I mean, to put that in perspective, that number is more than 30 times the size of the entire U.S. economy. It's an amount that's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. And of course, that mountain of debt didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It came along with the government printing billions and billions of fresh dollars. In Zell's mind, you take that much debt, you add that much money printing, and you've got a recipe for disaster. And this is where Zell asks a really simple but kind of terrifying question. When interest rates were practically zero, down around 2%, the country was already struggling under its debt load. So now that rates are getting pushed up towards 4, even 5%, how in the world is the country supposed to afford the payments on this gigantic pile of IOUs? This is exactly why he sees what the Federal Reserve is doing, raising interest rates to fight inflation, as basically slapping a tiny Band-Aid on a massive wound. It's a short-term fix that does absolutely nothing to solve the much, much bigger problem, which is the debt itself. And believe it or not, this isn't the first time the country stared down a crisis like this. And to really hammer home how serious this is, Zell looks back at a pretty dramatic time in American history that he actually lived through. It's a powerful parallel to today. Something called the Volcker Shock. So here's a super quick history lesson for you. After World War II, the dollar was tied directly to golds, which, kept things pretty stable. But in 1971, President Nixon cut that tie. And that basically opened the floodgates for the U.S. to print money whenever it wanted, which set the stage for a huge inflation problem just a decade later. And boy, was it a crisis. By 1981, inflation was out of control, hitting nearly 15%. So to stop it, the Fed chair at the time, Paul Volcker, had to do something that just seems insane today. He cranked interest rates up to a mind-blowing 21.5%. Zell remembers this like it was yesterday, and that memory is fueling his warning right now. Okay, so that's the mess brewing here at home. But Zell's other big worry is what's happening on the global stage. He's arguing that for the first time in a long time, we're seeing a real challenge to the U.S. dollar's top dog status. He's calling it a fiat currency crisis. Now, what does that even mean? Well, a fiat currency is just money that isn't backed by something physical, like gold. It's basically backed by one thing: trust. Trust in the government that prints it. And Zell thinks that trust is starting to seriously crack. I mean, think about it. For decades, the entire world has basically run on US dollars. But just look at what's happening now. Russia and China are making a point to trade with each other in their own currencies. And maybe even more important, a longtime ally like Saudi Arabia is openly talking about selling its oil for Chinese yuan instead of dollars. Guys, this is a huge deal. And here's why that matters so much. The dollar status as the world's go-to currency gives the United States this incredible, unique superpower. It's the only country that can print endless amounts of its own money to pay its bills around the world. If the world decides it doesn't need the dollar anymore, poof, that superpower just vanishes. Now, I know this all sounds like some high-level, abstract stuff, right? But Zell brings it right back down to earth. He breaks down exactly what this could mean for your wallet, for my wallet, for everyone's wallet. And his prediction, it's specific and it is chilling. He says if the US dollar loses its status as the world's main currency, the cost of living for every single American will shoot up by at least 10%, pretty much overnight. Just let that sink in. Everything, from the gas in your car to the food on your table, would instantly cost more. And if you think that's bad, he's quick to add a pretty ominous warning that 10% jump is just the start. He's basically saying the real economic pain could be way, way worse than that. So it all comes down to this one final, really critical question that Sam Zell leaves hanging in the air. When you look at the massive debt at home and these new challenges from abroad, how much longer can this all hold up? He doesn't give us the answer, but just asking the question, well, that's a powerful warning in itself about what might be coming for all of us.